Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's Global Intelligence Update. We've got a great guest with us, Ian Hatton, joining us. And for those that don't know Ian, let me do a quick introduction, guys. So, our guest has mentored, inspired, and liberated thousands of leaders from more than 100 countries. He's an international keynote speaker, widely loved for his genuine, warm stage presence and transformative message. His leadership development work has earned him a place in the Professional Speakers Association of South Africa's Education Hall of Fame. He is the author of Lead Like Morpheus, The Genius of Conscious Leadership, and the founder of the Totally Morpheus. When he's not mentoring the next generations of leaders, you'll find him colonizing Mars with his global alliance. Distinguished guest, prepare to liberate your leadership with our guest, Ian Hatton. Welcome, Ian, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Chris. Great to be with you. And I'm going to jump straight in because I've got quite a lot I want to get through and I want to have some discussion. Thank you, Philippe, for that. I think I can just add that to the bottom of my broadcast like that. Why not, eh? Thank you. Thank you for that, Philippe. All right, so let's get into this. I want to talk about building your product portfolio through speaking. How do we do it? How do we actually grow the speaking thing and add it to what we're doing? Now, for many of you, you're already speakers. So this kind of go, well, what are you on about, Ian? Well, I want to try and give a slightly different angle than the usual angle that we've gotten so used to. So let's have a bit of a look at this. I want to start with this. There are four different domains of leadership. And the domains of leadership the way I see it, I mean, this is, very elementary MBA type stuff, but I think it's quite interesting just to have a look at this as something that you can be thinking about. So let's start with this. The first domain is self-leadership or leading self. This is the core and the foundation of all great leadership, all great influence. So think of leadership as influence. You might even not even think of yourself as a leader. Reality is, if it's your job in any way to influence, you're a leader. And we need to be moving away from leadership as a position and rather be looking at leadership as a skill. And this is something that we want to generate all over the place. And the core and the foundation of all great leadership is self-leadership. It starts with leading self, your inner journey, how you take care of yourself, how you handle your own emotions, how you get in tune with your intuition and the fullness of who you are, your body, every part of who you are. This is self-leadership. And if you think about it, it's kind of obvious. If you want to influence others, but you suppress your own emotions, how can you have emotional intelligence and be in tune with their emotions? And so on with every part of who we are. Do you know your own genius? All of these things come in with self-leadership. The second domain, very obviously, is leading individuals. Now, a lot of people kind of go, but is this even a big domain? Well, let me put it this way. Leadership development training in the corporate space probably spend about 70% of their training budget on how to lead individuals. Maybe even a little bit more, because they do a little bit of the other domains, but their primary focus, and I've been doing it now full time for 20 years, doing leadership development, and the primary focus is always on how do I get an individual to achieve their goals? How do I get an individual to grow? How do I get an individual to be more engaged? How do I have coaching skills to lead these individuals? There is an incredible focus on this area. And so this is a massive domain, but often at the expense of leading self. The third domain is very obviously leading teams. How do we actually build a group of people to function well together? How do we get them to become a high performing team? And to give you a little bit of information, some of you will have heard of Tuckman's model. Hi, Shazar, good to see you. Tuckman's model, where we talk about moving from forming to storming to norming to performing and later to adjourning, or some people even say mourning when the team ends. And this whole idea of moving the team through the stages is a specific skill. It's not leading self, it's not leading individuals, it's building and creating a community, a collaboration. And just to give you a bit of information, somewhere between 15 and 20% of teams actually reach the high performing stage. And so team leadership that gets the teams to high performing is actually a really important skill. But my speciality is in leadership teams. Only about 5% of leadership teams ever reach high performing stage. They get so involved in defending their territory that they never become a team. And so there's a whole team leadership thing there. And then you get leading transformation. This is that leadership that is a domain bigger than self, individuals, or teams. So this would be where your impact outlasts you, where what you are doing is actually bigger. So think of a Mandela, or think of a Steve Jobs, or a Martin Luther King Jr., or I mean, we could think of so many different people, but these are where the transformational leadership outlasted them. And I would like to venture, because you're kind of thinking, Ian, where are you going? I thought you were talking about speaking. Well, I would like to venture that you are all transformational leaders. Every one of you is here to leave behind something bigger. Now, some people, because often when I talk about transformational leadership, one of the three areas within it that I talk about is legacy. And I speak to leaders about legacy, and they go, "Oh, no, 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 I'm not here to leave a legacy. That maybe will come later after I'm dead, but I'm not really here to leave a legacy." And I go, "Right, are you here to leave the planet in the same condition or worse than you found it?" And then they go, "No, no, 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 I want to make a difference. I want to make a permanent change. I want to, indelible difference." And I go, that's transformational leadership. That's legacy. And I think every one of you are in some or other way legacy leaders, transformational leaders. And that is my introduction to what I want to talk about. So let's have a look at this. I've got three main points, three main takeaways that we're going to be looking at. I'm going to be talking about speaking in terms of positioning. I'm going to be talking about speaking in terms of the process of speaking, and I'm going to be talking about speaking in terms of the setup. What are the ways we want to make an impact? Okay, so let's get into this. So positioning, process, and setup. Let's start with positioning. So, as a transformational leader, as somebody who wants to make a difference in the world, how do you position yourself as a speaker? How do you make sure that you are known for what you really want to be known for? And I guess there is these sort of what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known as a speaker? Do you want to be known maybe as a subject matter expert? Do you want to maybe be known as a client or journey partner? And these are really interesting things in our positioning. And so I want to bring maybe a slightly alternate perspective to the one that we normally use here. And it's this. Think of speaking as a door. And which door do you want to enter through? Are you one of those people who is fundamentally around to train or coach, and that can get you speaking gigs? Or do you want to speak so that you can get training or coaching gigs? Which model, which door do you want to enter? How do you want to play this? And I'm gonna kind of break that model in the next slide, by the way. But I want to just start that thinking of: am I here to speak? Therefore, I'm going to build a reputation as a trainer, as a coach, as a facilitator, whatever it might be. Or am I here to make a difference, which is going to be that training and that coaching and that facilitation, and speaking might get me those gigs. In other words, I might even speak for free, but on stages where I know I can market myself. Or am I one who actually doesn't want to speak for free, but I want to get invited to speak because of my reputation I've built in other domains? So, what is the door? What is the door that we want to enter through? And by the way, it could be a mixture. It could actually be a mixture of those two. And this is what I've been discovering. So let me get a little bit vulnerable here. I always wanted to be a speaker. I've wanted to speak since I was in my late teens. I kind of feel like I'm here to speak. It's why I'm on the planet. Um, and it reached a point 25 years ago, 26 years ago, where I said to my best friend, and you know how you put these invitations out to the universe and then the universe listens? And I said to my best friend, I said, "You know what? I know I'm here to speak, but I need a message. I need something to speak about." And very quickly, I discovered this thing called authentic leadership, which became, with servant leadership and transformational leadership, what we now call conscious leadership. And so I've always had this passion to speak. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later on. But there is this kind of idea of what is our strategy? What are we trying to achieve in the speaking game that we're entering into? Uh, what if training, facilitating, coaching, mentoring, speaking, what if all of these things were not positions? What if they were skills? And I'm seeing something emerging at the moment that, and I don't know if it's just for me, but I'm certainly seeing it emerging for me, is I'm not being invited as a speaker. I'm not being invited as a facilitator. I'm not being invited as a coach. I'm starting to be invited for me. And then the thing opens up. So I'll give you an example. I recently did, just over a month ago, yeah, 5 weeks ago, I did a session for the top 170 executives in uh, a corporate that is that owns companies. So this was actually the top tier of the overall umbrella company, and then the major divisions in the company, the CEO of each of the individual companies, and the overall CEO. And so they had a 1 day leadership workshop, or 1 day leadership event actually, and they invited me to participate in this event. And afterwards, I thought, was this a keynote? Was this a workshop? Was this a facilitate? What was this? Because they gave me a 2 hour slot and then a lunchtime and then a 1 hour slot. And so 3 hours, I mean, obviously 3 hours, you're not just doing a keynote, right? But there were elements where I was preaching at them, man. I was on my roll. I was kind of, and they were loving it, you know. There were elements where I got them to discuss things at tables. There were elements where we did Q&A and we had roving microphones. There were elements, you know, we had a total involvement all the way through. But can I box it to say, was I facilitating or was I keynoting or what? I can't. It blurred, completely blurred. That there were just these moments where I was inspiring. There were moments when I realized they were stuck on a particular issue. They didn't get this idea that great leadership is built around self-leadership. And so I got really vulnerable and I told my story of my self-leadership journey. It took 5 minutes out to tell that story, but it transformed the whole event. So it was storytelling. So what was I doing? You know, it was all of these things. And I think there is a place for our strategy where instead of pushing ourselves, I took the word coach out of my profile in 2018 or 2019. I took it out of my LinkedIn profile completely. And I didn't do so willy-nilly. And in fact, I'm now looking towards, we're just strategizing exactly how to do it, but I'm looking to take the word speaker out of my headline profile. Because what's happening is the clients that I'm attracting are actually looking for me. Then we are workshopping and then we are discovering what they need. And according to what they need, how much of that is facilitation, how much of that is workshop, how much of that is subgroup work, how much of that is me actually inspiring them, you know, doing maybe like a closing, a keynote type. How much of that? I don't come with a preconceived idea anymore. I'm coming to say, what do you need? What do you need? And so for me, this idea of my label is coach or whatever. And let me assure you, I'm highly trained as a coach. I have done many different courses, and including a very intense advanced course on organizational relational systems coaching. So I've got a lot of qualifications, but I don't want to advertise myself as a coach because that doesn't stand out. I want to kind of be in a category of one. And you can't really be in a category of one when you using these generic labels. And so, do I use coaching skills in the work I do? Yeah. Do I consider myself a brilliant coach? Actually, I don't. But in my mentoring and facilitation, I bring my coaching skills in and it makes me a better mentor or a better facilitator. And so to me, these things are skills. And I'm going to come back to that point a little bit later on. Right. So let's have a look at this. What if you were the product? What if you were the product? And this is the breakthrough I've had in my business just in the last few months, is people are asking for me. And then, yes, I have a business behind me called Totally Morpheus, and that can lead to, and I bring other of my colleagues in and my team in, and we arrange these things and we brainstorm and we come up with all sorts of ideas. But what's starting to happen, and just to be clear, this is not an ego trip. This is just, I've been around a little while and I have started to get a bit of a reputation. And what's happening is I've stopped playing the expert. I'm just going to come back to this point later on as well. I've stopped playing the expert because playing the expert means you think you've got all the answers and there's an ego thing involved, right? But have I built up expertise over my life? Yes. And the client's starting to draw that out. And I'm going to come back to that point a little bit later as well. But my big takeaway question for positioning is, what if you were the product? What if you, your personality, your uniqueness, your genius, your life experience, even, by the way, your weaknesses that you can be vulnerable about? There are certain things that I'm just not wired to do. I do them terribly. I see Joni on the call here, and Joni often is brilliant at things that I'm terrible at. And I marvel at how Joni can do certain things that I really suck at. But that awareness is part of my brand. It's part of my brand, that awareness that I'm not here for this, I'm here for this. Oh, you need that. You know what? I've got somebody who's brilliant at that. That's part of me being the brand, is me being very aware of both my strengths and my weaknesses. And I have total areas of genius. So as much as I'm comfortable admitting my incredible debilitating weaknesses, I'm also very comfortable that I have absolute areas of genius. And if I'm the product, can you see how this cycles back to where I started with self-leadership? Then if I'm the product, then my biggest investments should be in leading myself, discovering more and more of who I am. Where is my genius? Where are my weaknesses? Where is my spiritual journey, my intellectual journey, my belief and heart journey? My journey in terms of understanding my intuitions, because a lot of my genius plays out in intuition. Um, and do I even know the difference between intuition and instinct, by the way? Because they are very different. A lot of people don't even, but a lot of people use them interchangeably. But an instinct, if you think of a cat, it has instincts. These are things that are innate from its birth, or its inheritance, or its DNA. Whereas an intuition is actually fed by things that are now and is built over time according to your unique genius, which is really interesting. So can you see the investments, if you're the product, that you need to make in yourself? Now, let me actually, I'm going to ask a chat question. Let's get into the chat before I move on from that. Um, if you could put into the chat, where do you think you most need to invest in yourself in terms of self-leadership? Is it in knowing your genius? Is it in knowing your weakness? Is it in learning to trust your intuition? Is it learning to be in tune with your body and your emotions? Because our emotions typically manifest in our bodies. So let's go with that. Well, actually, I'll split those: body, emotions, intellect, in terms of your genius, your brain genius, your intuition, or what was the other one I mentioned? Weaknesses. Okay. Greg says all of them. Joni says trusting the intuition. Joni, it's so interesting. My journey with that has been significant. I remember once saying to one of my best friend at the time, and I said to her, I don't know if I can trust my intuition. She was like, "What do you mean?" It's like, I don't, I think I need to learn to trust it more. She said, "In all the years I've known you, I've never known your intuition to ever be wrong." And I'm like, okay, you see that, and I didn't see it. how important is that? So there we go. More into intuition, says Philippe as well. Dovey is also intuition. Karen, weaknesses. There's something liberating. I have a belief, Karen, that the degree to which we accept our genius is limited by the degree to which we accept our weakness, or the degree to which we accept our weakness is limited. These two work together. The more we understand, I'll never forget when I did my first ever StrengthsFinder assessment, which was when it was launched 23 years ago. I was one of the first people to ever get the book and do the assessment. I immediately became of two things that just blew me away. The first was, I have unique genius. And the second was, so does everybody else, because I've also got weaknesses and I can see how brilliant they are in the areas that I'm weak. And I truly believe that the more we accept our weakness, the more we can liberate our strengths. So I love that. Thank you very much. Trusting and discovering genius, says Shazar. Nice one. Weaknesses, says Diane. And emotions and fear, says Adila. This is such a big one. I have an earnest belief. We are in a society that teaches us to ignore or suppress our emotions, or to find some way to master them or manage them, kind of get them out of the way, because we don't want to live a life from our emotions. Problem is, the more you put a lid on something, the more it stews, right? And what we really want to do is to learn to express our emotions. I like to view emotions as indicators on the dashboard. If your oil light comes on in your car, you've got some options. You could get some of that nice black insulation tape and paste it over there, and then your oil light's not going to bother you anymore, right? What's going to happen? Your engine's going to blow up at some point, or you could take a hammer and smash it, right? And a lot of people have that approach to emotions. They want to smash them, they want to block them, they want to cover them, they want to avoid them. And actually, what we are looking for is we want to allow emotions to be expressed, not to live by them, but to be aware of their message. They're telling you something. If your engine oil light comes on, it's got a message for you. We don't know what the message is. It could be that we're running out of oil. It could be that the oil sensor is broken. I mean, it could be many different things. And so really the idea is, if we do not tune in and say, what are these things telling me? And let them be expressed, because when they're expressed, we are free to think clearly again. And so we don't run by our emotions, we actually listen to them and then move on from that. So thank you very much. And I think, Adila, I so identify the emotions and the fears and the confusions, all of these things, and to not suppress them, but to actually let them be expressed. I think that is critical.
Thank you, Ian.
All right, I need to move on to my part two, and I'm already, nearly half the time. So let's move along a little bit. What about the process? So we're talking about adding speaking to your portfolio. What are some of the things that we may want to be aware of? And I would like to venture that this idea of moving away from, I'm positioning myself with this label of coach or facilitator or whatever it might be, is going to be centered around how customer centric we are. Because the more customer centric we are, they don't care what the label is. And this is where we want to go. And so I want to talk about the trap that I see as we go through this process. The trap that I see when we look at the process of becoming a great speaker is this. We get caught up in thinking our job is to serve our content. We get caught up in the trap that we think our job is to serve our content. Our job is not to serve our content. Our job is to serve our clients. And I've seen this over and over again. In fact, I had somebody who I know quite well, also in the speaking business, who got to get a multi-month rollout of training for a client that actually happens to be somebody I've known for 30 years. This client called me and said, I don't know if you know this guy or not, but we want to boot him out the door, because all he's doing is he's not listening to anything we're saying. He's not tuning into who we are as a client. He is just focused on pushing his content, pushing his content, pushing his content. And our job is to serve our clients, not to serve our content. So how do we do that? How do we escape this trap? Because I used to get trapped in it. I'll never forget. Let me tell you a quick anecdote. When I first got into facilitation more than 15 years ago, when I started doing it properly, um, I got feedback on a evaluation form from somebody that completely changed my world. And the feedback I got was this, and this was I was probably about my fifth or sixth big international, facilitation, and the response form said this. Just to be clear, I was devastated. It said this: Ian's need to be right is getting in the way of being a good facilitator. Ian's need to be right, and that changed the direction of my life. Because I realized that by me thinking I have to have all the answers and win all the arguments, I'm actually stifling their ability to learn because learning is actually a self-discovery process. And my job was to facilitate their learning, not to think of them as empty and I'm full and I'm going to tip my stuff into their heads. Doesn't work. It doesn't work. And so I want to escape this trap of I'm there to serve my content. I am there to serve my client and to facilitate their growth and their transformation. So I would like to suggest that the big focus is we need to ask, not listen. If this was your client, they have things they want to tell you. They want to debate it. They want to have the conversation. They don't want it for you to be the one who is, the one broadcasting, the one speaking in the setup prior to the event. You want to be taking the client on a journey where you go, I did this. So I told you about this big facilitation I did 5 weeks ago. We had a debrief the Monday afterwards, and it was some of the best feedback I've ever had in my life. But what then happened, they said, "Oh, and by the way, the core team is meeting in 4 weeks' time. Would you facilitate a session with the core exco team?" And I said, yeah, great. Tell me a little bit about. They gave me some ideas. I put together those ideas and I went back to them and I said, look, I don't know if this is what you're looking for, but here's some of my thinking. But can you tell me what would be the ideal outcome for you? And maybe you can give me 3 indicators of how you know you've reached that outcome. And this is this massive conglomerate head of HR said, can we turn the recording off, please? I turned the recording of the meeting off. And by the way, what they said wasn't dramatically personal or even political. It was just so heartfelt that she didn't want it to be recorded. And she listed 3 outcomes of 3 significant things that she thinks need to change in the organization. I took those 3 things, I slept on it, I came up with a proposal, I took that proposal to them that Friday, actually the following Monday. And this head of HR said, it is, she cannot think of a single thing she'd like to change. She just wishes the event was tomorrow, not next week. Um, and then I delivered that event and I got a lot of positive feedback. But there is something about our client has information we need, then we design the solution. We don't arrive with the solution and then think of, well, swallow, it's like medicine. You just need to swallow. No, the client can give information. And what happened is, the solution I originally came up with was good, just to be clear. It was good. But what I then came up with was brilliant. And I delivered that session on Friday and it worked. It worked brilliantly. And so the culmination of that session is she then came to me and said, oh, by the way, we're now doing our budgeting for next year. We need to speak to you so that we can make sure we put enough in the budget for you. Music to our ears as entrepreneurs, as people in this kind of business. And therefore, it is our job, and you know this from Mike and Lundy already, but it is our job to take our customers on a journey. It is not our job to come with our prepackaged solutions and shove them down their throats. It is our job to listen, to take them on a journey, to ask them questions, to then come back with what I did in both of these cases is I put together the slides and I then came back to them and said, this is my idea so far. It's a draft. What do you think? Is this going to work? Do we just throw the whole thing away and start again? But I tested everything on them. And the result was in both cases, what I finally delivered exceeded their expectations. In both cases, they said to me, this is way beyond what we thought was possible. And so that's really what you want to do. You want to be tuning into that journey. That full day workshop, well, the 3 hours that I did was actually part of a full day workshop. We made sure we were there at 7 a.m. We listened into everything else that went on. They had an astronaut as the opening keynote speaker. I was able to draw 20 things from his presentation and include them in our workshop to bring that continuity. And when the CEO did his closing session, he repeatedly referred back to my session. So there's this integration because it's all part of a journey and it's all part of something where they're having an impact that is way bigger than my content. It's about the journey. And of course, then the follow-up session afterwards to say, how did it go? Where could we do better? What could we do differently next time? Which just led to more business, which is leading to more business, which is leading to more business. So this is the thing. It's all about a journey. And so this idea of this process of speaking is let it be that we find out what they really want and take them on a journey like they've never experienced. So that then leads me to my last area. But before I go to my last area, I want to talk about an upcoming book. So Marie and I have written a book called Love Like Morpheus. We were planning to launch it in December. We think it might be delayed a little bit, but we do already have something called the Log Cabin Conversations, which is basically the video and audio recordings that we used to create the book. What we did to write the book is we had a framework. We knew what we were going to do. There were 12 principles in the book. And we then took these 12 principles and we created 12 videos. And we have made that available now called the Log Cabin Conversations. So if you want to scan that QR code and get the Log Cabin Conversations, you're most welcome. You could listen to it while you're driving if you do the audio version, or you can actually watch us, some of which was done in our pajamas. So it was a lot of fun. But basically, we wrote the book in 2 days in a log cabin, and it was an absolute delight. And we're finalizing the transcribing, but we realized we want to put a bit more effort into the editing. So we may delay the launch, but the Log Cabin Conversations are already available. So you go, hang on, Ian, what on earth has that got to do with leadership or speaking or whatever? Well, my core belief is that leadership is love. Leadership is love, not niceness. I want to be really clear about this. Not niceness. I mean, the kind of love that is, can't scan the QR code. Is there a link? Oh, can I give it to Chris afterwards, and then we can get it into the stuff that we launch. Okay, Chris, have you got me spotlighted? Because that it might be that it's just a bit fuzzy with that. Just make sure that we have me a spotlight, because then it might be clearer or bigger if you see it that way. And if okay. All right, cool. No worries. It could be a resolution issue. Oh, there we go. Now the spotlight's working better for me. Okay. I don't know if that works, Philippe. Let me know if it does. Um, and let me just quickly tell you what I mean by love. When I say leadership is love, one of the images I use when I'm typically doing this with leaders, because they kind of go, still not. Ah, damn. We'll send you the link. We'll send you the link. Sorry about that. So one of the things I talk about when I do talk about leadership is love, is I show an image of a mother bird kicking the baby chick bird out of the nest, because that's an act of love. And so it's not niceness, but leadership is doing for our people what they need. And that's an act of love. Not what they want always, but what they need. That is, in fact, an act of love. So, yeah, that's just, I think really interesting. This is so interesting. I've just tried it on my screen and it does work. So it might be Zoom messes up the resolution. I'm aware of that. Sorry about that, everybody. I'll give Chris the link afterwards and he can post it when he posts the recording. All right. So the love like Morpheus is actually relationships, the principles of relationship at work. And whether they're at work as in at work or working as in they could be friendships, they could be romantic relationships, they could be teams. But these are these 12 principles that we wrote about. All right, let's get to my last area, which is the setup. What is the setup for what I believe is great for both virtual and in-person presentations? So I want to start with this, and that is the connection. When you're thinking about speaking to an audience, whether this is coaching or facilitation or workshopping or keynoting, whatever it might be, whatever that element is where you're addressing an audience, whether you're speaking or collaborating or facilitating, whatever it might be, connection is the key. Connection with the audience, not the connection with our content. That hopefully we know, but it's the connection with our audience. And I want to tell you something that I was told more than 25 years ago that initially kind of offended me. And now I believe it with all my heart. And I was told this: eloquence is in the audience. Eloquence is in the audience. And I was like, what on earth do you mean? I'm eloquent. What do you mean? Then I discovered something fascinating. And by the way, you're probably noticing a little bit of this about my slides. There are not a lot of words on my slides. That means I have a lot of freedom. And you know what I've discovered? Is that when I connect with my audience, they draw out from me what they need, which is not my pre-packaged sausage machine, here's a fire hose, open wide, let me squirt it all down your throat. This is me being inspired or following my intuitions. This is where I think my intuition plays a massive role. And I'll give you some examples. I have literally been in an audience where I have been speaking about something, just kind of in my state of flow, and I see something on somebody's face, and I know what it is. They've got a question.
I
Looks
can
like
see. Yeah.
yeah, we dropped. Ian
Oh,
dropped.
you back, Ian? You back? You
Okay.
dropped from.
Sorry about that. Okay. Oh, yeah, it's just actually told me there's a problem. Okay. All right. Is it okay now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Oh.
Excellent. Just celebrating that it's okay. What happened was this particular situation. I saw something on somebody's face. It was clearly a question or issue, whatever it was, and this has happened multiple times. I've addressed the issue. The person has ended up in tears because they got the answer that they desperately needed. The people around them don't even know what's happened because they just thought I was speaking to everybody, you know. And then later on, the same happens with another audience member or whatever it might be. But there is this communication. We forget that communication is so much more than our words. But if you can read people's faces, if you can follow your intuition, the eloquence is in the audience, and the audience will draw out from you what they need. And that's the kind of speaker I want to be. I don't want to be the kind of speaker who has my prepackaged presentation and you got to take it the way it is. I want to be the kind of speaker that my speaking is stimulating thoughts, and I can go and I can address those thoughts and I can address those issues. And eloquence is in the audience. So connect, 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 connect. The more connected you are with your audience. And by the way, one of the key ways to do that is to be vulnerable. Now, I want to be really clear about this. This is not vulnerability as in, I'm going to try and be vulnerable to manipulate you into being more open to me. Okay. This needs to be authentic. People can smell inauthenticity from a mile away. So it's got to be authentic and appropriate vulnerability. This is not a place to hang out our dirty linen. This is not a place where I'm going to see if I can do an effect on you so that you can be more open to me. But I do think that we want to connect. And vulnerability is connection. I'll never forget Brene Brown. We actually talk about this in the book, but where Brene Brown talks about how she ended up with these two pals, the wholehearted and the others. And she said the others, they viewed vulnerability as excruciating. The wholehearted viewed it as essential. They didn't view it as easy or fun. They viewed it as essential. And I would like to venture that being a great speaker who really, really connects with their audience in whatever format that is, whether it's coaching, whether it's facilitating, whatever it is, being a great speaker is being vulnerable and connecting, being yourself, being real. And I found that time and time again, that's been a turning point when I've told a very processed and appropriate but personal story is where the audience has gone, oh, but that's true for me too. The number of times people have come to me afterwards and said, but your story is my story. Your story is my story. Or I tell a story of somebody I mentored and they go, oh, my story is his story. Thank you so much for telling that story. It's so inspiring. So connect. The next one is be the expert, don't play the expert. Be the expert, don't play the expert. This playing the expert is, I am here, it's the ego, I have all the answers. You know, it's so funny, but as I've grown in confidence, I actually think that ego thing is a insecurity. I think when you arriving as if you know everything, I think there's an insecurity underneath that. But when you arrive where you've done your homework, and part of being the expert is you're an expert at facilitation. You're an expert at connection. You're an expert in your skill is almost more important than being an expert in your content, because the content expertise will grow over time anyway. But if you can be really, really good at facilitating people to change mindsets. So let me go into that for a moment. The mindset thing. I talk about this a lot in my book, Lead Like Morpheus. But we often think that growth means adding knowledge and skill. Wonderful. Well, yes, very, very small time that actually happens. Very, very seldom does that actually happen. The whole idea is that most people will not be changed through adding knowledge and skill. And I see this repeatedly. In the old content-driven leadership development work I used to do, I would find regularly that people would come in and go, and I would go, okay, so here is this knowledge, here is this skill. Let's actually practice it. Do you know? Oh, this is wonderful stuff. I think this is brilliant. I'm going to lead this way. And oh, I've now got all the skills. We've practiced it and everything. And then their staff come on the same training a year later. And they go, did my manager ever do this course? Because I didn't see any behavior change. Behavior change is not driven by knowledge and skill. It's driven by mindsets. And if you think of a mindset as like an autopilot, so an autopilot, a plane is going in a direction. If you change the direction of the plane and let go, it goes back to the original direction. If you can change the actual autopilot to go to a different direction, then no matter what you do, it'll go in that direction. So without a mindset change, people's behavior doesn't really change, not in a sustainable way. And so we're really looking for this idea of our expertise should be in mindset change. Our expertise should be in facilitating people, which is often about ownership, by the way. Me giving you a great idea, wonderful, wow, stimulating, intellectually stimulating. You discovering it for yourself and going, oh my goodness, this is going to change my whole life. I've been waiting my whole life for this, but they've discovered it. Mindset change. And so mindset change is a lot about stimulating alternate perspectives, but it's especially about listening to your people, listening to the audience. And so this idea of getting 5-star reviews is not about being perfect. Being the expert is not about being perfect. In fact, when we get it wrong, how we handle it is where the 5-star review is going to come from. So I've got a friend who has a decking business. They builds wooden decks. He has 150 Google reviews now. Every single one is 5 stars. Every single one. Now, in a decking business, do you think nothing ever goes wrong? No, it regularly goes wrong. It's not about perfection. It can't be. But it's the way he handles it whenever there's a problem that results in every single client giving a 5-star review. And so it's how we handle the situation, not arriving as I'm perfect, but arriving as I'm here to listen and I'm here to serve and I'm here to stimulate your thinking and to shift your mindset and for you to shift your own mindsets. And that's where our 5-star reviews will come from. And I'm suddenly getting 5-star reviews in a way that I never did before. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about what I've been doing today. And that is this idea of simplification. Simplification. Pictures speak louder than words. I think I counted, other than my heading slide, I've got less than 20 words that I've used in this entire presentation. And I want to just talk a little bit about this idea of the simplification. If you can think of a play, if you've ever been to a live play, a live theater, okay, the backdrop is called the set, right? It's the set that that particular scene takes place on is called a set. And it's there to support the idea that you understand the context for the actors who are acting. The set isn't the play. The actors form the play. And it's the same for us when we're presenting. When we have something like a picture like this one, it's stimulating a backdrop for me to be able to speak. So you really want, whether you're doing this online or whether you're doing this in person, you do not want your slides to dominate. You don't want your people to going, oh, let me read what's on the slide. You want the people to be focused on you because you're connecting with them and you want their connection in such that they draw things out of you. So how do we do all of that if our focus is on our slides? And you know what's really interesting is I learned a lot about structuring presentations and the psychology and all of this kind of stuff. And Mike is brilliant at this, and I learned a lot from him. And then one day I woke up and realized I'd become a worse speaker than I had been because I was now so focused on what my slides had to say that I was no longer focused on my genius, which is connecting with my audience. And what I've done is I've obviously learned from all that stuff. It was good to learn. But the reality is that the real success is coming from using my slides as a backdrop, as the stage, the set that I speak on, and to make it as simple and simple as possible to evoke the emotions that open people up to what we're really talking about. Because ultimately, it's when we talk about changing mindsets, what we're really talking about is changing heart sets. And that's really what our job is. So when we are setting up, connect with the audience, be the expert, but don't play the expert, and make it as simple as possible for your audience to follow you and connect with you while you are talking. Now, I want to ask this question. Do you get it? Are you a transformational leader? I think all of you are. I think you're all transformational leaders. But what I'd like to do before I even wrap this up is just add into the comments. What is your top takeaway from today? Put into the comments. What is your top takeaway from today? And we can just see a few different ideas here. And then I've got 2 slides just to wrap it all up. Oh, thank you. Simplicity. Ooh, speaking to hearts. Isn't that brilliant? Wow. Oh, Dovey, thank you very much, Dovey. Brilliant. Okay, it's not about us. Thank you, Joni. Exactly, exactly. Ooh, Shazar, isn't that a good one? Wow. Very good. Okay, these are excellent. Anybody else? Top takeaways today? Oh, thank you, Karen. That's exactly what leadership is. It's about facilitating their growth and our own. So, oh, Diane, thank you for that one. You are the product. Exactly. Exactly. Okay. That's leadership teams, Joni. Only 5% of leadership teams become high performing. Okay. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Brilliant. Okay. So let me wrap up with this. To me, the ultimate of transformational leadership is what I call legacy. And really, this is what we are about. We are about leaving a legacy. We are about making a difference. I call it indelible influence. Indelible influence. The influence that we leave that will outlast us, outshine us, that will leave the world a better place than it was when we got here. And for me, my hope for you is may that result in serious earnings for you. Thank you very much. And we'll add some Q&A.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ian. Really, really appreciate that. What so many takeaways that we can get from that. Like Ian said, is there anything in the chat? Anyone wants to add anything or ask Ian? We've got him online
Or
now.
open your microphone. Johnny.
Yeah, and there were so many things. I wrote down a lot of notes, and that real, as I put in my, that eloquence is in the audience. It's given me a lot of comfort because it's okay not to be the best keynote speaker, but to be really good at facilitation because I can read and feel a room, and I can change direction quite easily as to what is in the room. So I've never felt that as a great strength, but I heard you say it in a mastermind the other day. I wrote it down and I've written it down again. So now it's going to stick. So I love that. I also, the other thing, I'm doing a 4-minute at a showcase, and I've got a hand in slides, and you really were helpful today, just saying less than 20 words on all your slides. And I just thought that gives me maneuverability. I'll be sending in my 4 slides to them that have nothing on. So okay. In January, when I do the showcase, I can do what the heck I like. So you've just made my life a whole lot easier. So thank you. And it really is that backdrop analogy that you gave. I mean, this is on a massive stage with 120 panels, but I just thought that's so true. If you can just have the right. I mean, I love this end slide you got here. I think you're so funky. So it's to be comfortable with that is just that it's an image and you speak around it with such gravitas and stature. So yeah, today was well worth the time. I'm glad I could squeeze it in. So thank you. Really heartfelt thank you. I always learn a lot.
Thank you, Joni. Much appreciated. Thank you. Corin.
Ian.
And then Diane.
Diane.
Hi.
Corin first,
Sorry.
and then Diane.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Diane. Then I'm not a speaker by any stretch of the imagination. I've spoken, I've been invited to speak at events and stuff, but very minimal. But I've found that when I was recently at a networking event, and I sat and listened to it's a ladies' networking event, and I sat and listened to all these ladies talking about what they do in their business offering and everything else. And they were given quite a bit of latitude to carry on for quite a few minutes. So, and whilst I had my whole thing ready about how I was going to talk about my business. And as I like you say, reading the room, I was reading the room and realized that I had something else that I needed to say. And after I did, because I spoke about my own personal journey, because that for me is that's my why and what drives me to do what I do. And when I have spoken about it previously, it's been so well received and had such a great impact. And my question really is, how do I even start? Because every time I have an audience, the reception that I get afterwards is so incredibly moving for me, because I get these big hugs and how inspirational my story is. How do I even start? Because I want to be able to empower other people through my journey and how it changed my life from zero to hero in my terms. And how do I start?
So for me, there's this combination of being yourself authentically and wisdom. The wisdom piece is get what your audience is looking for, find out what they really want, make sure you address that, and then see how you can weave yourself into that, because what they're really buying is you, but they also have an issue. And it's how do we connect the two? How do we connect their issue, the outcome they're looking for, with who you really are? But I'm happy to have a separate conversation with you, Corinne, if we need to do that, because I see we've got literally seconds left, and I really do want to hear Diane quickly. But thank you for that. I hope that gives you a start. But happy to connect with you, Diane.
Yes, sorry, just very quickly, you're talking about, I love what you said about that whole amalgamation of everything: speaker, facilitator, mastermind facilitator, etc. And that's probably my biggest thing, is that, you know, marketing me as the product, because I've been around a long time. But the market likes to have a keynote speaker. The market likes to have a mastermind facilitator, etc. But I totally associated with what you said today. And I think that probably where you are with what you're doing, that is a natural progression, because you've been in the marketplace for so long. I think for people who are going into the marketplace early, would be a bit difficult for them to do that, because the market wants to know keynote, etc. What are your thoughts on that?
So I still pursue that. I just don't label myself at it. So, for example, if I see a speaking opportunity, I pursue it. I pitch for a speaking opportunity. So it's not. I'm still always attentive to all of these possibilities. And I have some of my closest clients who are on a journey of coaching and stuff with me, and they know they get coached. But it's really a matter of, I don't pigeonhole myself.
Yeah, because I had a look at the
Adila, I really would
website.
love to get to your question as well. Sorry about
That's all
that,
right.
but be yourself, Adila. Be yourself. And I think we can end it there, Chris.
Superstar.
Awesome.
Don't want to
Thank
go
you.
over.
Thanks again for the answer.
Yeah, just look how cool that is. Automated. Wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, guys, just want to say, Ian, thank you so much for the session today. And guys, we had the link in the chat at the above. Let me just quickly get that as well. If you want to connect with Ian. Oh, that's so cool, Ian. Very cool. If you want to connect with Ian, I just put it in the chat. There's his LinkedIn. Reach out to him, have a chat. And yeah, just want to say thank you again to everyone that's online. Thank you to everyone that's listening offline or viewing offline. And then, of course, Ian that's here with us today. Ian, you are so awesome, and it's always great having you here. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys again next week. Have a great week ahead, everyone. Cheers, cheers.